Hello, Steve White, Trackboy 89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, we heard a little bit of a rumour today, yesterday, and I'm not quite sure why this is getting much attention. Bounding into Comics, which isn't the greatest source, was quoting a even smaller source called the Vulcan Reporter, and it's not news, but it's sort of interesting that they seem to be doing something with it now. Back in 2016, Nicholas Meyer, who of course wrote and directed Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and he worked on Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, and Star Trek VI, which are sort of considered the best Star Trek films. Personally, I feel Star Trek II kind of ruined Star Trek and Star Trek films for good, because it established the whole villain vengeance theme, which seems to have been mistaken for Star Trek at some point, where every film now is some villain wants vengeance, then they have a big space battle, and that's what Star Trek is now. Just whoever in crew is the crew of the moment, defending against some villain who wants vengeance. Star Trek the Motion Picture was more successful than The Wrath of Khan. It made more money, but Wrath of Khan cost less, so it was more profitable for the studios, and it did better with some of the reviewers because it was more like the original series in some sense, that it was sort of brash and colourful as opposed to this sort of monochromatic 2001 sort of style they went with Star Trek the Motion Picture. So it kind of got considered the best Star Trek and the template for Star Trek by the sort of general public and media, and everyone sort of knows, we all know I'm not going to do the Khan, but we all know the Khan meme and everything. So it's kind of become the not the benchmark, but it's become a problem for Star Trek now, and even to the point where Into Darkness ripped it off, which is interesting how they did that, where they just swapped the roles and then undid it within 5 minutes, and it was really pointless and did nothing except just the cringiest meme ever, where Spock does the Khan meme. So I'm not a huge fan of Wrath of Khan. I think I like Star Trek 3 more out of the trilogy, because I felt like you got to see more of Starfleet and more of space in Star Trek 3 than you did in Star Trek 2 or Star Trek 4, because Star Trek 4 were on Earth most of the time. It's a funnier film. It's better in that way, the way it's written. It's more enjoyable for the family. It was the reason why it made more money. Star Trek 2 was always kind of dark and claustrophobic, and that's how Nicholas Meyer wanted it. He saw Starfleet as and starships as submarines and that sort of warfare, and that's something that was relatable to people more so than the vision that Gene Roddenberry had for Star Trek the Motion Picture, which I think is amazing and beautiful, and I love it. So I'm not the hugest fan of him to start off with, of Nicholas Meyer, honestly. And people are like, oh, you can't say that. Well, that's just, I'm not the only one. Now, they, of course, when they were doing Discovery, and they were scared because they knew they didn't have the license for Star Trek. So they, I'm not sure Fuller knew that he didn't. Somebody knew. They started bringing on people to sort of give it some Star Trek cred. They brought on Rod Roddenberry, and they brought on Nicholas Meyer. They needed names that Star Trek fans would be familiar with, so they'd be soothed and comforted that this will be Star Trek. Don't worry, it will be Star Trek, even though they knew it wasn't going to be, because that's how they work. And that was 2016, I think. And he worked on the show for the first year, and he apparently wrote some things and contributed, but he's not sure exactly how much he contributed because of the nature of TV and the way it's written, because he never worked on TV before, and the way it's written as a committee and all that, which I think is a bit of a criticism, which is he's very sly. I've seen a couple of interviews, and he's very sly with how he spills the tea. So, and he sort of just disappeared after the second year. He apparently wasn't invited back. But at some point, someone asked him to write a Khan miniseries. Now, we've already had, I think, a trilogy of books from, was it Greg Cox? I seem to remember him because he did a interview on one of the Star Trek DVDs, special features for the films, the special editions. and he was very funny to watch, but informative and interesting. But it's kind of funny. He did a trilogy of novels, and then someone did a miniseries for IDW, which I still haven't read, although I own it. Both dealing with Khan's. Greg Cox started off with Khan on Earth as a kid and rising to power, and then they had him dealing with life on Ceti Alpha 5. And the comic book series deals with him on Ceti Alpha 5. And this series is supposed to deal with him on Ceti Alpha 5, and it's called Ceti Alpha 5. And basically, it was written as a 3-part, possibly 3-night event, like event series, miniseries. And I'd heard it was written for the CW originally, that they were going to put on... CBS was having it written for the CW, and that always seemed odd to me because they were creating Discovery for All Access, and it does seem like it was almost separate from the whole Discovery universe and Discovery production team and everything. And Nicholas seemed to be working on his own. I'm not quite sure what that was about. But now that they're sort of desperate for content and they're just dragging anything Star Trek up and any Star Trek idea they can get, apparently now the rumour is they're going into production with this. And why they would go into production on Season 4 of Discovery or this before Strange New Worlds, when they've already got sets built and fans begging for it, probably because fans want it, and they've already sort of... Kurtzman has said he won't have a male captain on a Star Trek series ever, or in Starfleet. Basically, it has to be a matriarchy. I was going to say what is a democracy? It was almost like I was going to say a mayocracy. It's a word that doesn't exist. I don't know where that was coming from. But so yes, that's where we are. Apparently, they are going to do this, and they apparently are already casting, and they want an actor of Indian descent, because there was the whole drama with Khan was an Indian character who was played by a Latino character, an actor, well, he was a character, but actor Ricardo Montalban, who was brown enough for 1960s TV. He wasn't a white guy doing brown face, thank God. He was a Latin guy with a tan, basically playing an Indian, and it's fine. He's managed to get by without any real criticism, actually, for it not being the right race and everything. Now, when they got into Darkness, and they were doing Khan, which I knew before anyone else, by the way, I was in the first audience for the film, first real audience for the film, not like media and that. And JJ said to me and the other people in the front, and everyone else in the cinema, of course, not to share it with anyone, and we didn't, because some people didn't know it was Khan. Other people did, because people working on the film had already leaked it, and the media knew beforehand, but generally the public didn't. But it was Khan, but they went a really, really weird route with it. They were like, well, we can't have a Middle Eastern guy being the terrorist in our film, even though we want to use Khan, but we don't want to use Khan. So they got the widest actor they could find. Apparently, they originally were going to go with I can't remember his name. What's his name? Benicio del Toro. I was going to say the director guy. Forgive me. And they couldn't get him, which is such a pity. He would have made a good Khan, and they could have just gone that way and gone for it. But instead, they went with the widest guy they could find, Mr. Cumbersome Snatch. I just love his name. There are so many ways to say it. And I loved him in August Osage County. He's a great actor. I do love him. I make fun of his name because it's just so much fun, but I do love and respect him. And they just destroyed the character. They made a mess out of it. When it was originally a different character, it was boring and bland because it was a white guy terrorist. It wasn't like, how is that boldly going? How is that a new civilization or a new alien? It's just an angry white guy being entitled and having to get revenge. So they kind of ruined Khan for the movie. But it was supposedly going to be a loyal retelling of Khan's, at least his years on Ceti Alpha 5, which would be fairly small. I mean, basically it's just some cargo containers on a planet, and then it gets trashed, and then it becomes a desert planet. It would have been fairly cheap. It would have been more dramatic. It could have been very interesting, although not remotely Star Trek. Star Trek is not about someone surviving on a planet. It's not Mars, like the film with Matt Damon. That's not what Star Trek is. Star Trek is exploring the human condition through the exploration of of space, and a human. I don't know. This was not it. So it was interesting because it just like they don't know what Star Trek is, and they're just desperately trying to find something that will work. So it's like, let's do a series on Khan. Everyone knows Khan. That's their level of understanding of Star Trek, and it's disturbing. I'm not hugely opposed to seeing it, but as a side thing, just for the fun of it, not as a main course. It's like a side meal. It's not like the main thing. So I don't know. When we've got an active Star Trek that we can watch every week, it's okay to have odd things on the side, like maybe even a Section 31 on some level, because it's like when they had the Next Generation and Voyager running at the same time as Deep Space Nine. It didn't matter they had Deep Space Nine, which was an alien space station with basically Earth issues, which didn't really fit in Star Trek. Done well dramatically and the writing was great, but it really wasn't Star Trek. But we kind of were okay with it because we had Next Gen and Voyager at the same time. So we had our Star Trek, and then we had this weird alternative dark Star Trek as well. But when you don't have that, when the main Star Trek is weird alternative dark Star Trek, you can't be doing this. So I don't think it's really going to work, but I still don't know why we're taking this seriously, because it's Bounty into Comics reporting on a no-name, nobody site that, I haven't heard of it. I don't know if anyone else has heard of the Vulcan Reporter. Hopefully they're not actually someone I just don't know about, but I've never heard of them. And they don't seem to have any proof or sources or anything. They just seem to be saying there's a casting call out. I haven't seen any proof of that. But that's the news. I kind of missed the whole point. Dev Patel is supposed to be him. Now, I don't see him as Khan. He was the goofy kid in Slumdog Millionaire. He's got a goofy look about him. I know he's grown up. He's grown a beard. He's trying to look more mature and masculine. But he just looks like a goofy kid to me. I cannot take him seriously as Khan. There are a lot of hot, masculine, aggressive Indian guys out there, or Muslim guys out there. Get one of these guys to play Khan. Not this guy just because he's a name. Just because he's a name, nobody cares. No one who likes him is going to watch Star Trek show if they don't like Star Trek because he's in it. Not going to happen. He's not a big enough star for that. Just get an actor that looks like Khan, acts like Khan, sounds like Khan. Maybe he will be Khan. But no, this one, no. So I'm surprised it's getting any attention. I'm talking about, because I wanted to talk about the series originally, how it was developed and all that, and a bit of how Khan was portrayed in Into Darkness. And I thought, well, this is an excuse to make a video about that and talk about that as well, which is why I spent most of my time talking about that. But yeah, I don't have an issue with seeing it, but like I said, in the absence of a real Star Trek being produced and having our real Star Trek every week, these things in place of Star Trek kind of worry me, because they're not Star Trek, and I miss Star Trek. We have lost Star Trek. People who love Star Trek are, suffering loss at the moment. We don't have that new place to escape to every week, every season. We just have to go back to our old safe space of the old DVDs and Blu-rays and everything. So I really don't want these sort of projects to become what Star Trek is. Section 31, Khan, Discovery Season 4, where they're basically lost in space, stuck on a planet. And there's some talk that they're going to get off the planet and go exploring the 25th century, and I'm like, 32nd century. And I'm like, why does anyone think that's going to happen? Seriously. Why does anyone think that's going to happen? They didn't do any exploring in season 1 or 2, and they were free to do it after the Klingon War, but now the Federation's been destroyed. They're in this desperate, stranded situation. They don't have the time to go off exploring. That was what the 24th century, 23rd and 24th century gave people in Starfleet and in the Federation, is that they had the means to just go exploring because Earth was in a good place. They were basically living in this... I've lost the word. Not optimistic. This utopian society, and they had the opportunity to do this. They don't have that anymore. They've destroyed it. and now they want to go just casually lounging around and exploring the galaxy for the embedment of humanity. They're trying to survive. They're not going to have the time to do any of that. And if they do just suddenly start doing that in the middle of this, it's just a mess. And I don't understand how there are people actually thinking that Discovery Season 4 is going to be like Strange New Worlds. Now, the only chance we get of having anything resembling Star Trek is going to be for Strange New Worlds. And that's the one they're putting off to the end because they don't want to make Star Trek. It's just pathological and bizarre. But I'm going to go. I got to talk about the Star Trek Ceti Alpha project and Into Darkness, and that makes me happy. But I don't see this kid, Dev Patel, playing Khan. He's just not the right character. I don't care if he's a name. There are other names they could get to play him. And they're also just better actors, more masculine, aggressive, Khan-like characters. I wouldn't mind seeing it, but after they've sorted out Star Trek proper and we have an actual real Star Trek show like Strange New Worlds, or just ditch the whole JJ verse, that whole alternate disco universe, any of those universes, and just go back to the original licensed Star Trek through, the new Paramount, CBS amalgamation or whatever. That's what I'd like to see. If we don't get that in the meantime because of the contracts that they already have existing from CBS All Access and Secret Hideout, then Strange New Worlds. But I'd rather see those before we see Khan or anything, because I'm afraid weird side projects that are very much generic science fiction are going to become the norm of Star Trek if we don't get back to what Star Trek actually was. But I'm going to go because I've talked way too long on this. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Sorry, my mouth is so dry. I hope I haven't sounded too bad. Thanks. Bye.